Today's show is sponsored by Matific. This week, February 14th through 20th, is the warm-up for the free fun Matific games. Register at coolcatteacher.com/math and stay tuned at the end of the show for more information on Matific. Teach the Whole Preschooler, Nurturing Developing Minds, episode 253.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
How should we be teaching preschoolers? Cindy Terebush is an expert, and she's author of Teach the Whole Preschooler, Strategies for Nurturing Developing Minds. So, Cindy, as you look at preschool today, what do you think the biggest issues are for where we're going wrong?
I think that there are a couple of issues, actually. I think that we're living in a very high-pressure world right now, in a very immediate gratification world. And so what's happened is we've gotten away from respecting the process of early childhood learning. It's a process. And those of us who are adults, we've gone through that process. We know it. We know that there are certain skills that children have to obtain before we can realistically ask them to do some of the more academic things that adults want them to do. I think we're just so used to having everything at our fingertips that we've lost patience with that. I also think that the demands that are going on right now in our schools have dropped the curriculum. So what used to be taught in second grade is either being taught in first or kindergarten, depending on where you are. And what used to be first grade is now being taught in kindergarten or preschool, depending on where you are. It used to be I would speak in front of a group of kindergarten teachers, and I would say, so maybe 5 years ago, I would say to them, what grade level are you teaching that, where was that learning 5 years ago? And they would say it was in first grade. And now when I stand in front of a lot of kindergarten teachers, they tell me they're teaching second grade work. And so it has also fallen down to preschool.
So a lack of patience, and it's not that the standards are too high, but the standards are not age appropriate is what some have told me. Is that what you're thinking? Do you think we're pushing them to do too much, too fast, too early?
I don't know. I've read the standards, and I don't know that they are so inappropriate if they are implemented correctly. And I think that's the problem. When I look at preschool standards, for example, they say children should be exposed to or have demonstrated an interest in, or none of it says mastered. Mastery of things having to do with letters and sounds and reading and math are part of the kindergarten standards, not preschool. The standards themselves are not so inappropriate. It's the implementation of the standards that I think are very challenging. And I think that, the standards for kindergarten are the ones that say children need to have mastered certain skills, not preschool. Preschool is all about exposure and experience and exploration.
So do you think how we're doing these standards-based report cards where we have, the M for mastered or whatever, is that where we're falling short, that we're actually grading them on mastery instead of just exposing them?
Yeah, and I think mastered for one child is different than mastered for another. These are individuals. Our school systems were really designed on sort of a factory model when we think about it. It's sort of like the Ford assembly line. We're going to take the children and we're going to teach them this here, and then we're going to move them ahead and teach them this here and move them ahead and teach them this there. But the problem with that is that we're dealing with individuals with all different levels of experience, development, and ability. So, I think to kind of blanketly say, well, you've mastered this, that's great, but the person next to you has not at the age of 3, 4, and 5 makes it very challenging for the teachers.
Okay, so we've talked about some problems. Is there anything we're doing right that's kind of new that you think we've got right?
Well, I do think that it's great that I'm noticing the pendulum swinging back to understanding the importance of play in the early childhood years. There are a couple of states that have taken the core standards and put a statement in front of them saying, we need to be sure we're emphasizing play. And I think that's great. I do think it is going a little bit back to people understanding the importance of experiential learning. So, those pendulums swing slowly, though. That's the problem. They swing really slowly. And we need to, as early childhood professionals, be looking at the world in which these children are entering, which is very different than the world you and I entered after our early childhood experience. And looking at the knowledge that we have about how young children learn and saying, what do they need for the world they will go to, which frankly is something you and I probably can't even picture at this point with the speed of technology.
Yeah.
You know?
And with smart machines coming, I mean, been reading a book about the title is Humility, and it's about how it's important in the smart machine age. But things like creativity, innovation, and people skills are so important. And we're spending so much time focusing on some rote knowledge in some points.
We really are. And you know what? If you look at the standards too, social emotional is in there. And it can't be ignored. And it should be the first standard because it's really what these children are going to need so much. They have information at their fingertips. I was in a classroom with 2-year-olds. One of them asked me a question and I said, I don't know. I'll find out. And she said, where's your Google? She's 2. She knows to look in Google. They're growing up with that. So they don't need to sit and rote memorize as much as we did, but they certainly need their critical thinking skills. So that when they're looking at that information online, they can think critically about it, try and determine if it's true or not true. They'll know the right questions to even ask Google. These are the things they're going to need to know, how to analyze and think things through.
So Cindy, you travel the country and you take a look at a lot of preschools. But could you tell me an exciting story of preschool done amazingly right?
Yeah, there are a number of schools that I walk into now that have stopped doing weekly themes, which we all did, have stopped doing letter of the week, which we all did, and now realize that sort of thing is not deeper learning. And I love it when I walk into schools. I walked into one last week where they were doing, more like study topics where the children are investigating a particular topic for maybe a month or 2 months, and they're really digging deep, and children were being observed by the adults as the adults kind of figured out by watching them, what do you know, what don't you know, and how can I add to your learning? There was lots of hands-on and experiments. And one of the soapboxes that I'm on right now has to do with, when I'll walk into schools and everything will be great and they'll be doing all this experiential learning, but I still see them doing letter of the week. We should know better now. That's not really how children learn alphabet best. That also needs to be individualized and based on each student. So there are some schools I walk into where the children are learning letters in the order of what's important to them, like their name and then maybe their parents' names and their street name. And that's wonderful. That's really doing it right.
Oh, but isn't it so hard to have every child learning different letters in different order?
It is, but it's all about your classroom management. So sometimes teachers will say to me, how am I supposed to do that? I've got 15 kids in here. And how you do that is you sort of divide and conquer. And instead of doing it all together as a large class, you sit them down in small groups and work with them maybe 4 at a time. Generally speaking, early childhood classrooms have ratios, so there's more than one adult in the room. And that's how you do it. You kind of divide and conquer. And remember that the teachers have to remember the large group time when everyone is gathered together listening to you is not actually the optimal learning time. It's when they're sitting with you one-on-one or with a small group.
Oh, wow. But, then the teacher says, well, how can I have one-on-one time with everybody to teach everything?
You can't have one-on-one time with everybody every day. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can have small group time. You can have like 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 almost every day. And then each day, maybe you pick another child or a couple of children where you think, I'm going to do some one-on-one work with these children today and these other children tomorrow and these other children the next day. I think we do have this very adult need to kind of do everything with everybody at the same time. And it's just not how they absorb information the best.
So, Cindy, give us a 30-second pep talk for preschool teachers about going out there and really bringing it for their preschoolers this week.
When we work with preschoolers, we're touching the future. When I ask adults, how would you like the world to be? They tell me, I would like the world to be kind and compassionate. I would like it to be respectful. I would like there to be a respect for intelligence and knowledge. That's what we do in early childhood education. What you want the world to be, it's what you're creating. So I think we have to remember that when we're sitting and speaking with early childhood learners and when we're interacting with them.
Well, preschool teachers, you are so important. We do have to remember These are precious, beautiful children, and we can get so caught up in numbers and standards that we can forget that they are children. And I know that you great preschool teachers out there, you keep that front and center, and that's part of your job is to advocate for those kids. So get out there, and thank you so much for what you do. This past week, I wrote about Matific on my blog at coolcatteacher.com/Matific. This site is full of free math manipulatives that are standards aligned. So students learn math by using the manipulatives. And those who've taught math know just how powerful manipulatives can be, but they can be a mess. Well, you can play these on the iPad, the computer, the Chromebook, and each student can have their own customized playlist of the standards they need to meet, and it can even be in their language. The Matific games will be running from February 21st through 28th, but right now, February 14th through 20th, 2018 is the warm-up practice week. That means you can still sign up to participate at coolcatteacher.com/math. They'll get you and your class set up in 24 hours. So if you're a K through 6 classroom and you need some fun, free math practice, sign up for Matific.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.